Some of you noticed that maybe we have an ongoing theme. This is October, and so this congregation and many other UU congregations are focusing on the theme of sanctuary. So we'll have readings and music and sermons about sanctuary. In preparing for that, one of my colleagues posted on Facebook, she posted the questions, what are we a refuge from? What are we a sanctuary for? Some of the responses were dazzling. Some I kind of found trite. The dazzling ones were the ones that spoke of an optimistic courage and challenge, and the trite ones were kind of stuck in old language that was more about what we aren't than what we are. But I like those questions. I think they're very good questions for any congregation. They might even be good questions for this congregation. What are we a refuge from? What are we a sanctuary for? It might be very interesting if we ask ourselves these questions, and I think it'd be wonderful if our leaders listened very closely to whatever answers we come up with. Okay. Years ago, a dear friend was just broken to bits when her marriage ended. And on weekdays, she would get up and prepare for work by putting on her makeup absolutely perfectly. This was her way of focusing herself to push it all down and get on with it. She steeled herself with each layer. But on weekends, when she didn't have to go into the office, she didn't bother with the makeup. And though she found that on those days, her life just kind of flapped like loose sails with no wind to carry her forward. And this went on and on. Finally, one Sunday, her sister just came and just scooped her up and took her to church. It wasn't even her own church, just took her to church. She didn't know anybody there. But when she got into the sanctuary, she just lay down in the pews and proceeded to cry. All of the grief and anger came out. She cried for the whole service. And then she went back the next week and the next week, crying out all the tears. The people there didn't try and fix her. They would just pat her gently, give her a hug. You see, they had created a sanctuary and accepted that here she would cry. They had made a sanctuary to hold her tears. And so she came. It makes me wonder, would their sanctuary have really been real if she hadn't brought her tears? Okay, what is sanctuary space? It has a few different meanings. I'm going to go digging down through some of them. Maybe I can find the hardest ones. We often use the word sanctuary to mean a safe place, like a bird sanctuary. And that's using the word very much like its cousin, refuge. Refuge is a place where a body may rest safely. In a refuge, terrible power is kept out and safety is assured. So, if this place was a refuge, what would we be safe from here? I would love to see this place be a refuge from consumerism. It tells us we must always acquire and consume to measure our worth in terms of product. Perhaps this place could be a refuge from all of the systems of oppression that have held too many of us at the margins for too long. And I know that a lot of us see this place as a refuge from orthodoxy or doctrines of hate, and that it should be a safe place for free thought. Often that is why we are here. But we must always ask, are we really free if we are still seeing anyone as less than? And in this season of political rhetoric, I want to say that again. Are we ever really free if we see anyone as less than? So this place might be a refuge. What would make it a sanctuary? And for whom? We're also familiar with sanctuaries as a haven, as a shelter. And right now in our denomination, many of our congregations have already committed to or are in the process of committing to becoming sanctuary churches, to provide sanctuary for people who are facing arrest and deportation. And often these would be people who would face physical harm, even death, if they were to be deported back to their home countries. And so while they are struggling through our immigration system, they live in the church buildings. And they do not step foot out of the church building. When they do, they are surrounded by congregants and ministers. So they carry the sanctuary of the congregation with them into all of their legal proceedings. This practice of providing sanctuary, physical sanctuary for fugitives within the religious building, that predates Christianity. It got a lot of currency in Middle Ages in Europe, but it's based upon the notion that the gods were closer within a sanctuary, and that a fugitive seeking asylum within the walls of such a sanctuary, that meant that the person was willing to be seen by the gods and perhaps begin penitence. Here in the U.S., our laws do not prevent law enforcement from entering into religious buildings to make criminal arrests. Okay? However, at this time, for civil cases, people in civil cases seeking asylum, our government is choosing not to enter into a house of worship to make a civil arrest. Partly because they know it would trigger a whole lot of noise from some very well-organized people. So they're just kind of not doing that. I want you to see that this is an instance of people with privilege making space for those without privilege. It's very real space. That's another understanding of sanctuary. You don't have to dig down much deeper, though, and come to the Latin root of the word sanctus. It's the Latin for the word holy. Holy space. So what about here? Is this a meeting house? Is it a fellowship hall? What would make this, or really any other place, a sanctuary? A holy space. There's nothing remarkable about the bricks or the drywall. Perhaps you've seen a sanctuary of simply woven sticks, hollowed out stones. It's not the materials. Sometimes you'll find sanctuary in the location, the site of a miraculous moment or a natural wonder. But usually, the only thing that makes it a sanctuary is that we say it is. We make it. And as I spent time examining the ideas of sanctuary, the place, I began to see it in terms of concentric circles. The largest of the circles is the space that is created by community, a space created to be separate, a building separate from the larger world of commerce and law, separate from our homely hovels. And in this separation, we make the space intentionally sacred. This separation is as old as religion itself. Because this sanctuary, it recognizes that a holy space is a liminal space, a place for transformation to take place. Things happen in this space, and the person is changed. We enter covered with the mundane, and we leave shimmering from having peered into something larger than the self. Magic occurs in such walls. And while this place might be a space where it is safer to bring our whole selves, I want you to notice that if we truly make this a place of inquiry, exploration, if it is to be a place of transformation, it can never be a place where we are completely safe. Because we might be changed by what we experience here. This is what Annie Dillard is talking about when she observes, it is madness to wear ladies' straw hats and velvet hats to church. We should all be wearing crash helmets. The ushers should issue life preservers and signal flares. They should lash us to our pews, for the sleeping God may wake someday and take offense. Or the waking God may draw us to where we can never return. Ideally, our large circle sanctuaries are not places simply to rest and to heal, but places also to strengthen us, to get us ready to return to that larger world, refreshed and invigorated, encouraged, emboldened. That's what I mean. Things can change here. The next sacred circle in is created each time we draw together in a circle, looking inward at one another's faces, listening to one another's stories. And in this looking in, listening in, we will find the overlapping parts that make a sacred center. One more circle in, and we find the space between the self and the not self, the experience of the I and thou that theologian Martin Buber is attempting to describe to us. In this space, we begin to see the not self around us, not as a collection of objects and its, but as encounters with, relationships with the holy manifest in the world around us. Finally, in the inmost circle, sanctuary is created in the Chinese would call the heart mind, or the Chongshin in Korean, that inner core self. That space where we are busily maintaining our sense of separateness, but in that space, that inmost sanctuary, is where compassion abides and arises. And it is compassion that is slowly working to dissolve our illusion of separateness. So that's my take on it. Where will you create sanctuary? Not simply a refuge or a resting place, but a sanctuary where all who enter are equal and equally at risk of being changed by love. I like to think we're up for this task because we are Universalists. We have this understanding that people are mostly good and that we're all somehow carrying a spark of the divine. And I like to think that this is our superpower. And I'll love you whether you like it or not. You know that's what we're up to, right? Loving the hell out of this world. Yeah. We don't draw a line to separate anyone out. Instead, we draw the circle larger, paying attention to both the center and the edges. In true sanctuary, all souls in all conditions will be reminded of our connection to one another. Like my friend, we've been in the pews of a church. Even if all we can bring are our tears, in a sanctuary, they become our gift. Powerful tears that remind us all of our work. When we listen, we are creating sanctuary for the one who needs to be heard. When we still ourselves, we are creating holy silence for the unspoken to be known. Who will you include in your circles of sanctuary? Who will you invite under your umbrella? As always, I recommend that you start with yourself and work out from there. May it be so, and blessed be.